trouble melts like lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dare to, oh why,
Well,
can't I?
it is that time of the week that we do Over the Rainbow. Sharon, how are you today?
Good, and how are you, Mark?
Good. I don't know how we're going to fill this week's podcast. Do we have anything worth tributing? Anyone worth a dinner?
Yeah, well, certainly our headliners, Loretta Lynn and Coolio. I mean, you couldn't be more. They come under the same subject heading as music, but they couldn't be more different in their
You know
entertained
what?
us with.
I'm almost going to disagree with you in that I was surprised at how similar they turned out to be. But let's talk about
Right.
Loretta Lynn, and then we'll talk about Coolio, and we'll compare and contrast. Why don't you start? What's your take on Loretta Lynn?
Yeah, 90 years old. She was a country music legend. I didn't know. I didn't know, or I'd forgotten that Crystal Gayle was her sister, or is her sister. Well, was her sister, right? Yes,
What's her sister?
I guess they're still sisters, even though she's gone.
Yes.
She was, they grew up in very meager finances. She was. It said she was married at 13, but they think she lied about her age, so she was really 15.
I had seen 15 in my research.
Yeah, it said 13, but they think she lied about her age, and it's really like she was 15.
And
Her
apparently
husband,
got pregnant pretty quick.
right? It said her husband bought her a guitar for $17, and then it said in 2022, $17 would be about $188.
Yeah.
From 17, yeah, they're saying the value of the guitar, which he bought for $17, would now you could get the same kind of guitar for about $188, which they say is a decent guitar, but nothing fancy. So I thought, wow, that's pretty.
She taught herself to play. Now,
yep.
You mentioned Crystal Gayle. She has a lot of family. Patty Loveless, Venus Ramsey, who are in her bloodline and extended family. So she actually comes from a reasonably long line or cluster of entertainers. It's not necessarily that unusual. What I found interesting about her was the topics she tackled. This one seemed like every song involved a cheating husband, or someone trying to steal the husband.
She was pretty racy. She played and she sang in honky tonk style. That was a natural progression from the hill music of her childhood. I'm not exactly sure what hill music is. Is that like a shortcut for hillbilly?
Yeah, I think so.
Hillbilly music. She formed a band, Loretta and the Trailblazers, and just began playing around town. She was writing and composing her own songs that reflected her everyday experiences. I believe I saw her first song was I'm a Honky Tonk Girl.
By the way, it should be noted that she established her career while growing up not in Tennessee, not in West Virginia, not in Kentucky, in Washington.
D.C., right?
No, Washington State.
Okay.
In Washington.
All right.
I believe her dad was a logger or something like that.
Yeah, her Her first song, I'm a Honky Tonk Girl, was a story about a woman she met at a bar where she was playing, and the conversation she had, they set to the music of the Bakersfield Sound. And then she recorded a song that made it to number 14 on the Billboard Hot Country Song chart. In order to get it airplay out of it, because the disc jockeys wouldn't play her. They made like all kinds of calls, and they got hung up on, and they couldn't get airplay. But they actually hit the road. They got in the car. They just went from almost like door to door selling. Got in there and just made sort of. It's kind of hard
Honestly,
to say no. It's kind of hard to say no to somebody standing in your face.
well, that was not a very unusual way of launching a career or record label, for all musicians of that era. You
Really?
either showed up in New York at the Brill Building, where we talked about the various groups of writers, producers, musicians all clustered,
Right.
or you showed up in Motown, or you showed up in Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
where the producers and labels were,
Well,
and they were always
it
looking for
sounds to
artists
me
and
like
always
they
backup
didn't.
singers.
It sounds to me like they just went along each state and just pit stopped at like a whole
No,
bunch of different types of radio stations. But they finally started to play her song, and it began to climb the chart, and that led to working with the Wilburn brothers. And a key to her success, a spot performing on the Grand Ole Opry. And that eventually turned into a permanent spot, which led to a contract with Decca Records, marking the beginning of her rise to becoming the top woman in country music. And
three of
then
her,
like you say, she had a lot of controversial compositions. She wrote about how she lost her virginity, that incorporated in religious imaginary and in a way that was upsetting to her fan base.
she wrote about birth control.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote about, among her first three hits were Dear Uncle Sam, which talked about the toll that the Vietnam War was taking on this country. But
Mm-hmm.
she also had You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man, and Don't Come Home a Drinking with Lovin' on Your Mind, which kind of, attacked a cultural lifestyle that her demographic was certainly part of.
Yeah. But
And then, of
in
course,
the
you talk about her writing about her childhood. She's
yeah,
quite famous for Coal Miner's Daughter, both the song, the book.
exactly.
Well, I was born to coal miner's daughter in a cabin on a hill in Butcher Holler. We were poor, but we had love. That's the one thing that Daddy made sure of. He shoveled coal to make a poor man's dollar.
Right. And she charted number 11, number 1 solo hits in the 60s and 70s. I mean, even if you aren't a country fan, you knew the Coal Miner's Daughter was Loretta Lynn. I did not know she sang in the church choir when she was younger. I mean, a lot of her family did. Her whole family sang, including her younger sister Brenda. I'm not sure who. Do you know anything about this? I mean, I know about Crystal Gayle, but who's Brenda?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't. I
married
just
at
know
15.
that she
Yeah,
worked with many artists
yeah.
across.
I found this quote, which I thought was pretty cool. Married at 15, a grandmother in her 30s, and a career that spanned decades and changed country music. And that's it in a nutshell, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
By the way, I like her son's name, Jack. You're not in the show, girls. Her son's name was Jack Benny Lynn. I wonder if she actually named Benny. The kid was born in
after Jack
1949,
Benny.
and Jack Benny was famous by then. She named two of her daughters. She had twins, Peggy Jean and Patsy Eileen, for Peggy Sue Wright and Patsy Cline.
Mhm.
But she worked with people from all genres, not just country. She worked
Yeah,
with
no,
Elvis Costello and Jack Black and a whole variety. And she released her last album a little over a year ago, March of 2021. I think that's pretty cool.
I have some. In 1972, she became the first woman to be named Entertainer of the Year at the Country Music Association Awards. In 2004, so she kind of like faded a little bit, and in 2004, she made an unusual comeback that opens her music to a new audience. She recorded the album Van Lear Rose with Jack White of the White Stripes as her producer, guitarist, and backup singer.
And
White
the
Stripes is
one thing that,
definitely not.
to wrap up Loretta Lynn, I want to touch on something that I think was, well, something I often touch on. She was married to her husband for almost 50 years, and she describes him as someone who drank, who was an alcoholic, who cheated on her, who somewhat abused her, but at the same time was the love of her life, and she was the love of his life. She describes, even with the abuse, even with the other women, he made her feel special. He made her feel like she was the most important person in the world to him. And basically described a marriage that, warts and all, she described a marriage that wasn't perfect, but it was a good and loving marriage, which I sort of got. I think that was interesting. I sort of got. And she goes, I'm not explaining, I'm not excusing. He was a good man and a hard worker, but he was an alcoholic, and it affected our marriage all the way through. But it didn't change the fact that they were the love of each other's life. Anything else on Loretta Lynn before we move on to almost
Just
the
that
exact same thing, Coolio?
she released a collaborative album in 2016 as she approached her 84th birthday, full circle, in which she worked with Willie Nelson and Elvis Costello.
Okay, I thought we said that already, but that's cool.
I thought, you did say, you mentioned something about her last recording, which was Still Woman Enough, but I don't think you mentioned.
So, artist Leon Ivy Jr.
Yeah, otherwise known as Coolio.
What do you know
Go
about
for it.
rap? I mean, I'm not
I'm not into that genre at all. You were saying they were very similar. He's certainly not a legend.
He's not. I think in the rap world, he's absolutely a legend. He's what they would call OG. He's one of the originals, one of the founding artists,
Well,
one of the
that
first
might
major
make
crossover.
That might make him a pioneer, but it doesn't make him a legend. He was a hip hop star in 1995 with the single Gangsta's Paradise, which became one of the most successful rap songs of all time.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. Cause I've been blasting and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. But I ain't never crossed a man that didn't deserve it. Me be treated like a punk, you know that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and where you're walking, or you and your homies might be lying in chalk. I really hate the trip, but I gotta low. As they croak, I see myself in the pistol smoke. Fool, I'm the kind of G the little homies wanna be like, on my knees in the night, saying prayers in the street light. Been staying most of their lives, living in the gangster's paradise. We've been spending most of their lives, living in the gangster's paradise.
His subject matter and demeanor were lightweight in comparison with his peers. This was when it was all like the beginning of the rap era, but from what I was reading, he faded as rap became more popular. He kind of faded a little bit. He did a lot of TV shows. I read he did.
That's kind of one of the areas where I thought he and Loretta Lynn shared something in common. They both ended up crossing over out of their original genre. He
I
did
would,
do what looked like a ton of reality shows.
yeah, I thought I did not know he did jail time.
What I was surprised at is he was already a successful performer by mid 1980s,
Hmm.
and he got convicted in, I believe it was, what was it, 1994, 95, of a
Yeah,
crime in Germany where he went to jail. I mean, this is
he went to
already
jail.
legal. 1998. He
Yeah,
had
but
already been well established.
yeah, but he was taking crack. He got well, what I read was that he became involved in gang activity, did some jail time as a juvenile offender, and developed a crack cocaine habit. What made me respect him and why he gets a dinner is because he truly did turn his life around after he got out of jail. He rehabbed, he worked changing his life for the better. He found a new focus first as a volunteer firefighter in the forests of Northern California. He was a security guard at a Los Angeles airport. He came to the attention of Tommy Boy, a record label, and was offered a recording contract. And the result was his debut album, It Takes a Thief. So that's an interesting way to to really take off your career, I think. Uh,
I also kind of like with all his gangster image, especially from the early days, he ends up doing the opening theme song for Keenan and Kel's Nickelodeon show.
yes.
Keenan and Kel, for crying out loud. Just, I'm sorry. It's hard to portray that, droopy pants, gangster, teardrop tattoo image when you're doing a theme song for Nickelodeon.
Well, yeah, but but he made appearances on game shows. He was on Hollywood Squares. He did reality shows. He even had his own show, which I didn't know about, called Coolio's Rules, featuring some of his own children. Then he did a cooking. He did an online cooking series,
With
Cooking with
Rachel Ray?
Coolio.
Oh,
Cooking
he,
with
he,
Coolio.
he, he was on one of Rachel Ray's reality contests.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was inviting these other celebrity cooks on his show, and he was doing that. He was a spokesperson for the US based Environmental Justice and Climate Change Group. And
And don't forget the most significant thing he did, what everyone remembers him for. In 2020, he ran for vice president on the Democratic, in the
yeah,
Democratic
that, that,
primaries.
that, that
His
wasn't happening.
running mate was Cherie DeVille, who I'm sure you all are well versed and familiar with her oeuvre as a porn star.
I am.
She ran for president. Wouldn't you know who's running for president? Don't you generally lean Democratic?
I lean that way, but to be
Uh,
honest with you, I really didn't start diving in until Trump ran. So,
oh yeah, but this is 2020. He was going to run for nomination to run against Trump with
yeah, no, but I really
aforementioned Cherie DeVille.
but until Trump became, like, everybody sort of thought, oh, there's no way Trump will become the nominee. And then when he did, I was like, oh crap, because as New Yorkers, we both know all about Trump. So,
Mm-hmm.
I just was like, holy crap. So I just did a deep dive into Trump, and all the flags were there, all the
Coolio,
fire signs were there, and
so
I was like,
Coolio
oh
died.
shit.
Coolio died of a heart attack, and
Yeah.
it's not believed to be suspicious causes, but it is under investigation. So
Yeah.
I hope there's nothing that comes
Right.
out untoward.
Yeah, I mean, at first I really wasn't all, I was never a Coolio fan, and I was like, why are we doing him? And then when I read how he turned his life around, I was like, oh yeah, he definitely deserves a dinner.
But I think
So
just the fact that everybody, whether you know his specific work or not, everybody has some idea who Coolio is. His name recognition
right,
factor is very high. You
right.
know,
I mean, it was definitely a recognizable name.
Yeah, yeah. Let's move on to somebody you probably know a lot more about than I do, and I'm surprised given the resume he had. I'm surprised I had no idea. I'd never heard of Hector Lopez before.
Oh
You
no, no.
researched
I
this
mean, I
show.
didn't. Right, I didn't know as much, but yeah, I knew Hector Lopez was what we referred to as a bench player back then. He's a two-time World Series champ with
I didn't
AAA.
get the sense that he was a bench player. I got the sense that he was.
He was he was a bench player, which is considered kind of like a super sub right now. He played, or like a utility player is what he's
I
known
got the
for.
sense that he played around the field, but that he got his 500-600 at bats a year. 600 at
Oh,
bats a year
absolutely. No, he was.
is full time. That's not bench.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they didn't. But it wasn't looked at that way back then. It is now because somebody like DJ LeMahieu, everybody has to have a player like that right now.
Okay, no, but
Uh,
he played. He played 128, 151, 147. He's playing
yeah,
this one season in 59. He played 35 games. Oh no, he was traded, so he
he
played
played. Yes,
127.
he played. He played every position on the field except pitcher and catcher.
Right. So he was he wasn't a bench player. He was a full time starter. Every season he got just well.
He
So it's
was not
okay.
considered, but that's not how.
He
That's
didn't
not
play
how
the
the
same
record.
position every game. That's all.
Right, but that's still considered for the times that was. That's not considered a full time starter.
What I was impressed with
Hmm.
was how productive he was offensively,
He was,
especially
yes,
given
he
the team
was.
he was on.
Yes, he was an all
He was on the
offense.
Yankees team that went five to the World Series
Yeah,
like
all
5 years.
offense. They did not. He didn't. He was not. He was. He had a lot of errors when no matter what position he was at. I mean, he played all over the place, but he wasn't specifically good at any one of those positions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So he kind of had a hole in his glove, but the offense was definitely there. He played on the teams outside. He was in the outfield alongside legends Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris. And he was one of the first black players for the Yankees. Like you said, he was on those teams 5 consecutive World Series. What I found interesting was, and did not know, in the fifth and final game of the 1961 World Series against the Cincinnati Reds, he smashed a home run and a triple and drove in 5 runs in a 13-5 victory. He
Yeah,
finished.
I mean he had hits.
Yeah. Oh, the guy could definitely hit a baseball. And in 1969, he was named manager of the Buffalo Bisons, then the AAA affiliate of the Washington Senators, now the Texas Rangers. And he
First
led.
black manager in AAA baseball.
That's what I just said. And
Yeah.
he led the Bisons for just one season, and then it took 6 more seasons before Frank Robinson became the first black manager in the big leagues with the Cleveland Indians, who are now called the Guardians.
And then he went on to participate in Yankees old timer game for 50 years. I can't believe I had never heard of the guy.
Yeah, here it is. His first year in New York, he made 17 errors in 76 games at third base, 3 more in the outfield, but he hit .283 with 16 home runs for the Yankees, including his time with Kansas City, drove in 93 runs for the 1959 season. That's always a special year for you and me.
I
He
don't remember it all that well.
He lived on Long Island for many years. He worked for the Parks Department in Hempstead, and for a time coached high school baseball. He later moved to Hudson near Tampa, and he served as a scout, a coach, and a minor league instructor for the New York Yankees. And I took a quote here. He said in an interview for the 2002 book that was part of baseball just being able to play in the big leagues for as long as I did at the time that I played is something I'm proud of.
Yeah, anyone who gets to the big leagues has a reason to be proud. Anyone who
Absolutely.
lasts more than 3 seasons has a reason to be very proud.
Hmm.
Anyone who plays as a regular for 11 years and plays on a dominant team, plays alongside Mantle and Maris, has nothing to hide.
Yeah.
So moving on, you have somebody in the world of football.
Yeah, know that I'm not a football fan, but Gavin Escobar, 31 years old. Uh, story. The story surprised me because when you hear that someone that played that sport passed away, you're usually thinking, oh, he was in a head collision, and we hear all about you know all of these things having to do with head collisions. He was, but it ended up that he was a tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. He was among two people found dead in a rock climbing accident in California. But earlier this year, he began working for the Long Beach Fire Department. He was drafted in the second round by the Cowboys in 2013. He played 4 years with the Cowboys before playing one season in Baltimore, and he played with the Browns, the Dolphins, and the Chiefs. I don't know how good this is. It says he had 30 career receptions, 8 touchdowns, all with the Cowboys. I just thought he deserved a mention. So, as you
Okay.
would say, maybe not a dinner, but at least an appetizer. He
Okay.
sounded like a good guy. And we move on to somebody who's very unique. Antonio Anoki, he's 79 years old. He was a Japanese. So usually we do, like, when we set up, what people's topic is. Like, we have sports, and we have politicians, and we have singers, and this guy kind of combined two together. He was actually a Japanese wrestler and a politician. So I thought, well, that's pretty unique. He's probably most famous.
It's funny. We are getting a taste of that now, obviously, with the guy you mentioned earlier. And now you're seeing Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker, whose qualifications,
Are
as the
not even
lieutenant
that,
governor
no.
of Alabama, of Georgia,
Yeah,
just said, Herschel Walker's qualifications for being governor is he caught a bunch of touchdowns when he went to college in Georgia 30 years ago,
he's
for being senator. You
Herschel
know,
Walker is a scary person.
but around the world,
Yeah.
it's not that unusual to be a celebrity and a politician.
Right, but he used.
Manny Pacquiao in the
but
Philippines just ran for president. Was a very
but the
successful senator
difference
for many
but
years.
the difference is, the one difference there is that they often when you're in sports, you have like the second chapter of your career. So you go from, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He's a movie star, and then after he wasn't the movie star anymore, he got into politics, right? Ronald Reagan, he was a B actor in the movies, and then became president. This guy actually used
Oh,
wrestling
he had a detour as
to
governor of
promote his
California in there also.
political. Well, he actually
Reagan
used.
didn't just go right from B screen to
No, no, but you
president.
get my point. You get my point. It was a second chapter. This guy used his wrestling to promote his policies. But he's probably most noted for fighting Muhammad Ali,
He's probably
which
most noted in the United States for fighting
for
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali.
I think
He,
I think if we were to go in Japan and ask what he's most noted for, they might remember he fought Muhammad Ali.
yeah, it said he used his showmanship to win fame and influence in North Korea, Iraq, and Pakistan. He developed a one-man foreign policy on trips around the world while a member of the Japanese parliament's upper house. And he built a reputation and a following in Pakistan by presenting himself with wrestling there as a convert to Islam.
Although he basically said he's a Buddhist and a Muslim. And I have no idea how he decided what he was at any given.
Right. He projected the image of a jovial jock when slapping fans and fellow celebrities in the face, a signature move intended to transfer some of his fighting spirit, but it was anticlimactic in a stunt match in Tokyo against Muhammad Ali. It talked about how, like, when the bell rang, he sort of went after Ali's legs, and Ali's doing his dancing stuff. And he's like, what the heck is this? He didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that whole exhibition with Ali, and by the way, Ali's people did not want him to do that fight. He was already past his due date, and had retired probably 3 or 4 times by the time
Right.
he had that fight. They were very careful working with Anoki's people on just what the ground rules were going to be, what kind of attacks, and ultimately, for example, was determined Anoki could only kick if one of his knees was on the ground. But at different points, and it seemed Anoki more than Ali went way off script, which, by the way, he had a tendency to do. He had a habit of doing even in his wrestling bouts, which
Mm-hmm.
most people are going to be shocked to learn that they're somewhat scripted. But he was known to go off script.
Yeah, and then the whole thing came off as fake, but a year later he was doing some sort of interview, and he said that it was a New York Times interview, and he said he regretted that it looked fake, but he was really just trying to win the bout. So
Yeah,
he sort of apologized for that.
but he was still absolutely one of the dominant fighters in his skill, one of the dominant, and in the early mixed martial arts, probably before it was really known as mixed martial arts, he would be
Hmm.
the Coolio of mixed martial arts.
There you go.
Just to tie it
Uh,
together. And it seemed that his political career and his political skills were quite legitimate. You mentioned Arnold
oh,
Schwarzenegger, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, was an extremely effective governor in California. It wasn't a spoof. It wasn't a lark. He wasn't
oh,
there
not
just
at
because.
all. But my point was that he didn't use his celebrity to make a point of his policies. It was just like, in fact, it was sort of almost accidental that he became involved in politics. It's funny because Maria Shriver wanted to, who was a relative of Kennedy's, wanted to get away as far as she could from politics. She ended up marrying Arnold, and then what does he do? He goes and becomes governor. So
Yep.
that didn't work out the way she
In any
planned
event,
it.
Anoki
But
was a very legitimate politician. Uh, in addition to his starring in the world of wrestling.
hmm
So now we move on to someone you're very, very enamored of, Bill Plant,
yeah,
the CBS
you know,
journalist.
yeah. Look, I grew up on CBS News, starting with Walter Cronkite. So these when we run into these names, they hit a chord with me. Yeah, I'm definitely sort of see in my mind's eye Bill Plant sitting at the news desk. Yeah, not even that, because he was a senior White House correspondent under presidents was it Reagan, Clinton,
Did you make a mistake in sending arms to Tehran, sir?
No.
George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and during George H.W. Bush's presidency, he reported from the State Department. He had more than 30 years at the White House. That's quite impressive.
It's funny. I didn't realize this at first, so I'm just realizing it now. He joined CBS in June of '64, and
Mm-hmm.
a seminal moment. I mean, it's a watershed moment for network news. was the coverage of the Kennedy assassination, November
Yes.
'63. It's
Yeah.
when it was really the first time that TV became the central unifying factor and the place to go to get the news. So to join network news in June of '64 almost seems like people enlisting right after Pearl Harbor or 9/11. It must have
Right.
seemed like an exciting thing to get involved in on the
Mm-hmm.
heels of the Kennedy assassination. Of course, he started covering Vietnam and Selma
Right. It brings
and
us back
Martin
to,
Luther
right.
King.
Yes,
So
exactly.
he certainly
He was,
was in the heart of seminal moments in this country. He was one of the people helping to tell the story of what this country was to become.
well, you know what? I mean, I made a couple of connections with his reporting. Um, so, like you say, he joined CBS News in 1964, and he was sent right out to Vietnam. It was one of 4 times through the fall of Saigon in 1975 that he reported from there. He also covered the civil rights struggle in Mississippi and Alabama. He was quoted as saying that story was the most important in his career because he said it marked a sea change in American life as well as his. The thing that part of when I was reading about his reporting of that kind of hit home because the you know they 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 had a black people had a hard time voting. They made it very hard for black people to vote, and and he witnessed that. It's interesting, I think, to see that we are repeating history. He reported from what he witnessed in front of his eyes after the death of Representative John Lewis, the civil rights leader. He said, I was shocked by the raw hatred that he saw at the black people there trying to register to vote every day and got beaten back by the local sheriff. Well, now I think that we're in an era where we're witnessing voter suppression in the South by the GOP, right? They're making laws, making it more difficult for blacks to vote. They are stealing mailboxes and it's horrible. It's like we're going backwards instead of forwards. He won several Emmy Awards, including 2 he shared with other correspondents for a series on Vietnam for the coverage of the death of Princess Diana of Wales. Emmys that had coverage of President Reagan's reelection in 1984 and the Reagan summit with the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in '86. He was noted. Oh, I thought this was interesting. He was noted for his extensive wine collection. He was, let's see, can I say this word? He was an unofficial sommelier.
Sommelier.
Thank you. I couldn't get that out. And so he was all into different wines, extensive wine collections, and tasting. And I thought that was an interesting side note. He covered Bill Clinton's visit to New Zealand. He bungee jumped over the. This was like the thing I loved the most. As important as that other stuff was, he said, while covering Bill Clinton's visit to New Zealand, Plant bungee jumped over the Kauru River alongside White House aides. Before jumping, he declared, this is Bill Plant of CBS News proving that you're never too young or old to do something really stupid.
You're never too old to do something stupid!
My brother bungee jumped in Las Vegas, near Hoover. I get off some bridge, I guess, over Hoover Dam or something.
Is that something you would ever do? Is that something you would ever do?
No. I climbed. I know. I got up on a high diving board with a line of kids behind me, and I climbed back down. I made them move so I could climb back down, and that's almost scarier than just jumping off the bridge, off the diving board.
Board.
Yeah, we are just reading about You could go bungee jumping off a helicopter over the Grand Canyon. That's something else I'm not going to do.
No, thank you. No, thank
Now,
you. When I
unless
was
you have something
younger,
else about Mr. Plant,
no, I just wanted to say that, you know, when I was younger, it had always been my ambition to get into a hot air balloon because I thought it would be awesome, like the view and everything. And then I just think I would look down and go, "Oh no, what a bad idea." So good for him. Good for him.
now, I'm going to bring up someone who, in all my research, I'm going to safely say, because in the deep dive I've done, I'm reasonably certain David Gottesman never bungee jumped.
I could. I'm right there with you. You're probably there. He
I'm
probably
pretty sure.
did.
I'm pretty
He
sure
had
the thing he's most well known for.
is having a
First
dinner
thing
with
in his,
Warren Buffett.
well, I was going to say that would be the second thing. The first thing is David Gottesman never bungee jumped and had dinner with Warren Buffett. But
Yeah,
I believe
he.
never bungee jumping is going to be first.
Yeah, I had never heard of him, but one of the first things that I read during my research that he was actually a protege of Warren Buffett.
Oh yeah,
So
and he got in on Berkshire Hathaway really early, and that's one of these stories where like $1,000 because invested in
yeah,
1960 would be worth billions, and that he's worth
in a way, he
almost
was.
$3 billion.
Yeah, in a way, he was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
In being introduced to Warren Buffett, they really hit it off, and they ended up becoming quite close, both personally and in business. Eventually, becoming business partners. Um, he ended up having a once. I think they said every Sunday night they would be on the phone um, discussing ideas. I have it written down in my notes that it was once a week, to the point where he would fly. Where's that note? He would. Do you know what I'm getting at? Where he used to fly out to Buffett's house. They'd be up all night. Where is that? In 63 to 65. There it is. He frequently flew to Omaha, Mr. Buffett's base, meeting him in the afternoon, joining him for dinner, and then talking with him until 2 or 3 in the morning. On one occasion, they talked so late that they found themselves locked inside Mr. Buffett's office building, and he typically caught, I guess they would be considered red-eye flights back to New York.
okay. It's funny. I'm looking at something now which repeats that his initial investment grew to $3 billion. It doesn't say what that initial investment was. It does
I
say
read
he
that it
was
was the first. Yeah, I read
very early in
his.
Berkshire
I
Hathaway.
thought it was the first Manhattan. The
No,
first
but it doesn't say
Manhattan.
how much. It doesn't say what the dollar amount of that first investment that grew
All
to
right,
three
the first
billion is.
Manhattan and the Berkshire as co-investors.
Yeah, I
Buffett
mean,
fondly recalls many years of trips and long conversations with Mr. Gottesman. Um, yeah, did you read anything about him? He never had any interest in going to college, so he enlisted in the army.
I saw that. I mean,
Yeah,
I just
and then after that, he studied engineering at Princeton. Let's see. No interest in college, he enlisted in the army, which, after sending him to study engineering at Princeton, shipped him out to fight in the South Pacific in 1945 when he was 19. And World War II was drawing to an end. Attached to an artillery battery, he climbed trees to shrink communication lines from the front to fire command at the rear. And then he was
and and
honorably discharged.
and he's one of these people who seem to like do the right thing with his wealth. He donated hundreds of millions of dollars to various causes, most of them having to do with his Jewish roots, supporting
Mm-hmm.
Israel, bought the Dead Sea Scrolls to donate to Israel. That's That's pretty good. That's gonna get you. That's gonna get you a lot of knockus on Yom Kippur when you
I
can
should
say,
think
"Yeah,
so.
I bought the Dead Sea Scrolls and I donated them to Israel. Now can I screw a hooker or something like that? You know what I mean? That just
Right.
gets you a
And
lot
I
on,
think
on the
so.
other side of the slate.
I think so. It also says that his charitable donations included a bicycle path circling Jerusalem and the Gottesman Hall of the planet Earth at the American Museum of Natural History, and a glaring exception of Mr. Gottesman's reluctance to embrace the spotlight.
Well,
So
that's somebody who I've not heard of him. He
I
falls
guess he
under
would
the
qualify.
category.
He qualifies for a name we should have known better, Mark.
I think he's definitely somebody who I might have heard of, but I just didn't. Yes, I mean,
Hmm.
you know,
Probably a little more
Escobar.
well known.
Escobar. Never heard of Escobar. There's no reason to have heard of Escobar. Gottesman. Yeah, there's a little reason.
You had to go and say that. I don't agree with you. I think he deserved a mention.
Okay, he got mentioned.
Got mentioned.
Now
That
here, having talked about Gottesman, I'm sorry, we've got the new title holder for somebody who we should have heard of and didn't. I'd never heard of Audrey Evans before researching
no.
this week.
Yeah, she
And
was
she's
known as
awesome.
the mother of neuroblastoma
Now,
because
I lost a niece at 10 to neuroblastoma, and I was on the board of leukemia, which is a different form of cancer
Mhm.
that had a huge impact on children. So anything involving childhood cancer cuts very, very, very close to home for me. And the fact that she made her career, she was the first or at least only female in her medical school class.
she was the
She went
only
on
one.
to study in the United States, went back to England, and then returned to the US because she was not going to be permitted to work in her field of cancer research and treatment in England. So she came back to, I believe it was Boston or Philadelphia in the
She
US.
trained at Boston Children's Hospital for 2 years under Dr. Sidney Farber, who is known as the father of
Right.
modern chemotherapy. She went to Johns Hopkins, so you actually, so that's Boston, Johns Hopkins, to finish her medical training in 1955. After she finished her medical training in the United States, you said she returned to England to practice specialties in pediatrics,
And
but
came
she
here to
soon
work
learned
in
was strictly for
Philadelphia.
men and not women. So she moved back to Boston and went and worked at Boston Children's Hospital at first before she headed to the University of Chicago, where she worked in hematology and oncology unit. She
I
was then
like that
recruited.
CF recruited her to work at CHOP, Children's
Yes,
Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP, where she spent the rest of her career. And
correct.
what's cool about her, and especially this also hits close to home, is she went on to not only did she treat the illness, the cancer, but
Treated
the patient. But when she realized that patients' families, who often came from great distances, either didn't have or couldn't afford places to stay, she worked with McDonald's to
Yes.
to create what became the first Ronald McDonald House,
House.
which now there are hundreds of Ronald McDonald houses
Yep.
around the country. My son's bar mitzvah class, and I believe it was at my son's, I don't know why it was his suggestion, but I believe it was his suggestion. Each year, the 10 or 12 kids getting bar mitzvah uh, dedicate money to a charity. And they supported the Ronald McDonald House Foundation.
Also,
And she created it.
yeah, she decided she wanted to get involved in a school. There was a city camp on a school campus that she started to be involved with. but the campus would close once summer ended, so she decided to open a campus as a school. The St. John's School was opened on September 11, 2011. It was a tuition-free school for kids of the Allegheny West, Philadelphia area. The school's goal is to break the cycle of poverty by having an extended school year.
So I want you to think about that for a minute. She founded a school in 2011. That was
Yep.
11 years ago. The woman just passed away at 97 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So at 86, she didn't lend her name to the project.
No,
to
she
found
was
that
she
school.
was the project.
She was at 86. She founded that school.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because she had time on her hands, because when she was 86, she was, bored of celebrating her 6th wedding anniversary to a doctor she met in 1953. She got married in 2005 to a guy she'd known since 1953. At 80 years old, she married somebody that she'd known for 57 years, 52 years, 52 years. Do you think she had to get married?
No, I doubt it.
I didn't know anything about Dr. Evans before researching the show. I wish I had. I would love to talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a woman who gets married at 83, at 80, who founds a school at 86, who created the Ronald McDonald House. That's somebody I wish I had known.
Yeah, definitely agree.
That is just a cool person. So, anything else on
No,
Dr.
it's
Audrey Evans?
no, we're at that point in the show where we got to wrap things up.
No. We still have Sacheen Littlefeather.
Oh yeah. What do you have to say about Littlefeather?
Well, it's funny because I just literally finished the audiobook, Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli, which was a one of multiple books and a very well researched book on the making of The Godfather, the movie. And
Okay.
Sacheen Littlefeather became a national headline when Marlon Brando won for Best Actor for The Godfather. And when he was called up to the stage, he did not appear. As a matter of fact, he was not at the award ceremony.
He didn't go.
He did not
Yeah.
go. He said Sacheen Littlefeather, an American Indian representative, Native American civil rights activist, is the correct 2022 term, in her stead, to refuse the award. And the grounds that for Brando refusing to accept the award were the treatment and portrayal of American Indians on screen in movies and television.
Hello, my name is Sacheen Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards, that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry,
That when they were portrayed, they were either portrayed as cartoon stereotypes, as savages, as the enemy. And this was right around the same time as the massacre was taking place at Wounded Knee. And she was a participant when the American Indians took over and occupied Alcatraz for a lengthy period of time, although she did not stay on the island full time because she had to go to school. but she was very involved in bringing these issues to public awareness. She was somewhat attacked because she was also an actress. So was this, people are accusing her of using this as her way of getting known, although it probably caused her to be blacklisted in Hollywood more than it helped
Wow,
her
yeah.
career. She was, half the audience applauded what she was saying, half booed her, and she was interrupted. She was not really permitted to read her full speech because it was going to be too long, but she did make a summary of why Brando was not accepting the award, and then told the press that she would be more than happy to read the entire statement in a press conference after the ceremony. The Academy Award did recently, I think this year or last year, apologize to her and do a tribute to her for her mistreatment at that award ceremony. I mean, she was from here in Northern California.
Uh-huh. So when she went to school, when she went to school, she wasn't going to school on the reservation.
No, I don't think she ever lived on a reservation. She adopted the name Littlefeather. She was born Marie Louise Cruz. Her mother was Geraldine Marie Barnett, and her father was from Santa Barbara. No, the mother was from Santa Barbara, born and raised in Santa Barbara. Father was Manuel Ibarra Cruz of Oxnard, California. He was a White Mountain Apache and Yaqui descent. So she grew up mostly in Santa Barbara and then Salinas, which is northern California near Monterey, near where Eastwood was mayor. And then really got in touch with her Native American roots and adopted that name. And that's what she was most famous for.
Usually Native American Indian names have a meaning. Do you know why did she choose Littlefeather? Like, what did it mean?
Yeah, it was off of a nickname, the way I had seen. Let me see if I can find it real fast. And Sacheen had a meaning as well. Now she was going to, while I looked for that, she was going to pose for Playboy as 10 Little Indians following the Academy Awards. That fell through, but she did a solo spread, so to speak, about 2 years later. Oh, okay. And she was also a friend or neighbor in San Francisco of Francis Ford Coppola, which would be a big part of how she got to know Marlon Brando. Coppola is San Francisco based. She was San Francisco based. So she knew Brando about a year before this all happened. I'm not seeing how she picked the name. I remember seeing it. Littlefeather again was something that like a grandfather referred to her as just floating around through the room or something like that. But I'm not sure. And Sacheen symbolized the significance of something or attributed somebody important in the movement. She went on, she was an activist most of her life, working with AIDS, and especially as it affected the American Indian community. So she came by that, honestly, that she committed her life to those kind of efforts. She was an important person, more than a footnote. She got complimented by Coretta Scott King, or Brando did, for using a nonviolent method of protesting and making his point known. Jay Silverheels Tonto didn't think it helped or hurt either the Oscars or her career. Didn't think it was her idea. Thought it was Marlon Brando's idea entirely. Yeah, I'm not finding.
I tried to look it up while you were talking. It just says Shikoba originates in Native American language. It means little feather, and it could be used both as feminine and masculine given names. And in the United States, it is rather rare. So that wasn't a lot of help. Google failed us this time, but okay. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that brings us.
That brings us to the end of another wonderful episode of our show, which again brings us to our ending and a tribute to showing your love for those you care for today, because they may not be here tomorrow. Will you be here tomorrow? Is there any promises?
I am going to do my best, because we already know some of the people we're going to talk about on our show next week.
And who would that be?
I have a lot of editing to do. So, yeah, I have to be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Because, like I said, we've got stuff to do.
Who are we looking forward to talking about?
I don't remember. You remember? It's enough that I remember this week's show. But I couldn't. I couldn't tell you who all we just did.
I can tell you in 2 minutes, in less than 2 minutes. So.
Oh, we have Lauren Silverman, the judge. We have, and I'm not going to say any more. We have Pebbles. You want to know about Pebbles? You're going to have to tune into next week's Over the Rainbow.
What? I think we should entice them a little bit more about who Pebbles was.
Pebbles is enough of an enticement.
Okay.
That's all they need to know. If they want to know more than that, tune into Over the Rainbow next week with Sharon Yankovic and Mark Silverman. And you got to promise to be here next week.
That's right.
Sounds good.
See you next time.